You're listening to Eric Rogel Talks with Warriors, Lovers, Kings, and Heroes, where you'll hear real stories of the journey to modern manhood, told by the men who lived them. Raw, real, and 100% unapologetic. And now, here is your host, Eric Rogel.
Hey, this is Eric Rogel, and thanks for joining us on Warriors, Lovers, Kings, and Heroes. This is where each week you'll hear real stories of the journey to modern manhood told by the men who live them. In today's episode, you're going to hear a lot about integrity. Now, integrity is one of those words a lot of people throw around, and they may have an idea of what it means, but not a full understanding. I'm one of those people myself who only had a partial understanding of the word. In my younger days, I believed I was a man of integrity, or I guess I should say I wanted to believe I was a man of integrity. I would show integrity when out with others, when people could see me. But when I was alone, sometimes not so much. And as I found, being one way in public and another in private is the exact opposite of being in integrity. In fact, it's the definition of hypocrisy. So when the men of the round table and I were putting together the Sacred Seven core values, and integrity was one of the absolute key core values we wanted in there, I really had to admit to myself that I didn't have a full understanding of what integrity was. And so I looked up the definition. And according to Wikipedia's compiled definition, integrity is the practice of being honest and showing a consistent and uncompromising adherence to strong moral and ethical principles and values. Consistent and uncompromising. And that means always, not sometimes. It means being the same man in all aspects of your life, whether public or private, whether anyone can see you or not, whether anyone will ever find out or not. It means always in all areas. And really looking at that, I had to admit to myself, shit, dude, you have not been as in integrity as you tell yourself you have been. And again, that's the definition of hypocrisy. And honestly, I think there are more than a few self-help gurus out there who need to do the same thing. But because my commitment is to live the Sacred Seven core values, and again, they are courage, honesty, integrity, commitment, duty, honor, and love, I began seeking out men of integrity as mentors and role models. And today's guest is one of those men. He spent 11 years on the field as an NFL official and another 12 years in the league's front office overseeing officiating. He also used to be the featured rules expert for ESPN and NBC Sports. And in 1999, he had the honor of officiating Super Bowl 33, and that was John Elway's last game. His name is Jim Daopoulos, and he is a man who has spent the majority of his life enforcing rules, while also being watched and scrutinized in every aspect of his own life by both fans, other officials, and the NFL. Because in his line of work, integrity is a job requirement. Now, I know we all love to hate the refs, but when you sit down and actually talk to one, you find something entirely different. For a man who spent his career where cracking a smile isn't exactly encouraged, Jim is an incredibly personable and friendly guy, always ready with a story and always eager to help other men achieve their goals. I asked Jim about his life growing up and how he got started as an official, and he told me about being raised in a strong, proud Greek family with 2 generations helping to raise him. He was brought up in Marlborough, Massachusetts, about 35 miles west of Boston, and he says his family gave him a lot of love, and he has a lot of appreciation for them, for their sacrifice, and for how they raised him.
Mom and Dad both came from Greece, so I'm basically first generation. I have an older sister, Martha, and basically, typical Greek family, growing up, raised by my grandmother and my grandfather, who we lived in a 2-tenement home. Okay. And so they were very, very influential in my growing up.
So you had 2 generations raising you.
That's exactly right. It was just a great family situation to be in.
Was that typical in the neighborhood where you are? Was it a big Greek neighborhood?
It wasn't so much a Greek neighborhood, but the friends and the people that we were with all the time were Greek Americans, and my mother had 5 sisters. Well, there were 5 sisters, so we spent a lot of time with the various families all around, Marlboro and that surrounding areas.
So you had a lot of influence from older generations. I would think, like, coming from Greece, your grandfather was a different culture, was a different way of raising. So what was his influence like?
Well, I found what a hard worker he was, and how he was so into family values. It was all about the family with him. He worked hard, but he always seemed to be a grandfather. He was a white-haired man. He always seemed old, he's no older than I am at the present time.
Oh, really?
But he seemed a lot older growing up. And also my grandparents on my father's side, the same situation. My grandmother spoke a little bit of English. My grandfather didn't speak any English at all. So, we were kind of between the two families, and there was so much of this Greek American heritage that was, instilled upon me and the family at that time. We did everything together. We went to church. I went to Sunday school. I went to Greek school, which really helped influence, me as an individual. I was very much into the church at that time.
But how about the family? I mean, it seems like there was a lot of male influence in your life at that time. Both grandfathers and your father too. How was your father? Because he was from Greece as well, right? He wasn't born there.
My father was just the, I can't tell you, the things, the love I had for my father. Unfortunately, my dad didn't spend a lot of time with me. My dad was in the restaurant business, and he worked. He worked all the time. My mother worked all the time in the rest. That's why I spent so much time with my grandparents. My father was kind of the disciplinarian. My mother was kind of the, take care of Jimmy all the time and make sure that he's the good boy. My grandparents, my grandmother, anytime I got sent to bed, when I was bad, she used to sneak Greek cookies in her apron up to me and all that. So, I just can't tell you what a great family life I had, and I was very fortunate. It's one of those things that you need as you grow up. You need that influence from different generations, especially the ones that didn't have a lot when they came over there. They all came over. My grandparents, my parents came over with nothing. They had nothing, and they made it. They made it, and they made. We had a great family life. We traveled, we vacationed, but my parents worked really hard.
So it sounds like there was a lot of appreciation from them too, coming over with nothing and working hard and making it. There was that appreciation for what you can achieve.
That's it. Yeah.
And is that what you took from that?
Absolutely. I was very thankful for everything that I used to get. I mean, I got a lot, but I'll tell you, it was, I was the prodigal son. I was the one. My sister used to roll her eyes at me all the time because I could do no wrong. But I knew how to give back at that time too. I didn't take advantage of those situations.
And have you done that with you have kids of your own now?
Yes, I've tried to kind of give them some direction. One of the, when we start talking about this officiating, I'm going to tell you, I didn't spend the time that I should have with my kids, and that's one of the biggest misgivings I have about being an official and spending time. I started out early officiating. I was a young married graduate student at the university, so I was gone a lot.
So Jim had a lot of influence from his own family growing up. And while his father wasn't around a lot, he had the time, love, and support of his grandparents. But as you'll hear several times from Jim, one of his biggest regrets is not spending enough time with his own family, with his wife and his own children. His commitment to his career, to his dream of making it to the professional level of officiating, took precedence in his life. Interestingly enough, being an NFL official wasn't Jim's original dream. His first dream was to play in the NBA, and I asked him what made him change direction.
I actually played basketball in high school, had a scholarship, played at a junior college right outside of Worcester, Massachusetts, and we were pretty good. We played in the national championship out in Hutchinson, Kansas, and I thought I could play basketball. So I decided to walk on at the University of Kentucky because they had a basketball program that was pretty unique. They had some pretty good players there. So I went to the University of Kentucky and learned pretty quickly that basketball was not going to be my sport. I had the opportunity to play with some of the players at that time, Mike Casey, Mike Pratt, who were basically all Americans. And I learned pretty quickly that I was going to be a player. So I started officiating at that time after being in...
As a basketball officiating.
Basketball officiating, yeah. But what was happening was I just got married, and I had a young daughter, had an opportunity to go to graduate school. So the thought process was, when you're making about $200 as a graduate student, a graduate assistant, I figured rather than sacking groceries, I would start officiating. And I officiated football, basketball, baseball, volleyball, t-ball.
Wow. Anything
that went on. And it generated dollars for me. It's kind of interesting. I remember I started out officiating games for, $2.50 a game. I ended up going to the NFL, and as I said earlier, you're talking about $10,000 or $12,000 a game now. So I mean, there's a pretty big space there. But I had an opportunity, and I started officiating. An individual, a guy named Skeeter Johnson, Bernard Skeeter Johnson, who was the director of recreation at the University of Kentucky, he afforded me a graduate assistantship there.
Skeeter Johnson became one of Jim's first mentors, giving him his break into officiating football. As you'll hear, in this line of work, men mentoring other men and men recognizing the talent in other men is the key to getting started. But after that, it's up to you to make it happen. Jim explains.
When I finished graduate school, he made me the director of intramural sports at the university. And he was also in charge of booking for all the football in Central Kentucky for high school. So I started officiating football. And the thing with officiating is you get breaks. You've got to get some breaks. Somebody's going to give you the opportunity to work certain games. Somebody's got to see you. But once you get those breaks, then the onus is on you to perform. But I had that opportunity to officiate. I started officiating football, basketball, and baseball, but I got some breaks in football, so I pursued that a little bit more.
Is that fairly common for officials when they're starting out, is that you just officiate everything? You just go through and do a whole bunch of sports? I mean, is that pretty much how you do it? And then you find which one you're best at, you like most, or?
It was during my time, and because of my situation. I was young, I had a young family, and it helped generate some dollars for the family. Nowadays, I'm not sure the process is still the same. You work your way through the system, but that's the normal system. Is you work your way through it. You figure a sport that you enjoy doing, and then again, you look for that break of where can I move up more quickly.
I asked him if it's one of the ways you actually make it in officiating is to be scouted by another official.
What happened to me was I had an opportunity to work with some, I'll call them veteran officials, older guys. And once I got the opportunity to work with them, I knew to keep my mouth closed, listen to them, and do my job. And I had a great relationship with those individuals. So many of those individuals in Lexington, Kentucky, that gave me the opportunity, that would invite me to go work a kind of a bigger game than a high school game or something like that. They gave me those opportunities, gave me the opportunities to go work at some of the colleges as a fill-in official at scrimmages. And once you get those opportunities, then that's where somebody's got to notice you, and then somebody recommends you, to a higher level.
Hearing this, how it works in officiating, that more veteran officials notice talent and recommend them, help bring them to a higher level, amazed me. Because so often in business, we hear about people who try to keep competition down, especially if it's someone they recognize as very, very talented. And that comes from a sense of insecurity. But in the world of top-level officiating, it's a different story. Talent is sought out and mentored. I asked Jim why this was.
You want to assist the younger guys because when you're working in high school, you're looking to go to college, so you're trying to bring some individuals up from junior high to fill in, and that's the process. You keep moving up the ladder. Those officials that don't want to help the younger ones, they're probably not the better officials anyways. And there's a lot of them out there that they feel their job is being challenged by a younger
they're
official.
jeopardized by these guys coming in.
Yeah, and so you're always trying to get the better officials to move up. So, I saw that throughout my career, whether it was working, in high school, or going to the Ohio Valley Conference, or going to the Southeastern Conference, or going to the NFL, and then working up in the NFL league office. You see that, and you try to watch younger officials and see, do they have it? And it's really interesting, Eric, because everybody says, well, what is it?
I was just going to ask that. What is it? What are you looking for?
I don't know. I mean, we don't know what it is
until you see it. You know it when you see it, but you don't know.
It's kind of interesting. I can sit and watch a game now, whether it's a high school game, a college game, or a pro game. I can look at an official and I can tell you if he's got it. I can tell you if he's going to be a good official, and that just comes from years and years and years of watching film, of watching games. There's something about an individual, and the way he presents himself, the way he handles himself, and those are the things that you look for. But it's funny because we used to talk about it all the time up in the NFL office. Does he have it? And everybody's going, well, what is it? Well, we'll know it if we see it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a presence, like it's a command of whatever situation you're in. Like you said, how you carry yourself, that goes to
right. I can't say to you, well, do you want to be an NFL official? Here's what you need to do. I don't know. I mean, I could tell you, officiate and let us see how you work. Let us see how you do. But I can't tell you to comb your hair a different way, or to stand a certain way, or to wear certain clothes, or act a certain way. I know what I expect of you, and that better be how you present yourself when we're watching you.
This is men looking for a command and a presence in other men, that it factor that stands out and shows them he is someone who can take full command on the football field. I asked him about that, about being on the field with 22 very large, very athletic, strong alpha males running around at full speed and slamming into each other. I wanted to know how he takes command of a situation like that and how he earns the respect of the players.
That's a tough question because you have to demand respect by your presence out there. There's nothing that you could say to those individuals that will, you can't challenge them. You can't threaten them. You've got to go out there and just be yourself and have a presence. It's, it's interesting. You go out there, and in all the years that I officiated, whether it was on the field, in the NFL, or in the stadium, I never, ever felt threatened by a player. And the players are out there, they're playing this game that it's just a vicious game. It's a very vicious, aggressive game. But they know guidelines. And, I would never, ever expect a player to come after me. I would never expect a player to accost me in any way. Now, there's a lot of stuff that's said out there, and we kind of leave it on the field. Uh-huh. And it's kind of interesting because early in my career, there was a lot of banter that was going on between the players, coaches, officials, etc. But over the years, so
banter, like trash talk, is coming out too, right?
So, but over the years, as these microphones, these high-tech microphones come into play, we used to be told, and then we had to tell the new guys, do not talk to them. Do not talk to them, but watch what you say because it comes up on TV. And they'll pick it up on the social media, which has made it really, really difficult for officials.
Yeah, the trolls on social media ruin everything. I asked Jim what it was like to finally make it to the NFL level, and he told me the story of his first NFL game, which included some good-natured hazing by his fellow officials and also some sage advice, and some pretty funny advice from a legendary coach.
I'll tell you a really interesting situation was from my first game. The first time I stepped on the field in the
NFL game.
In the NFL.
What year is this now?
1989. the first time you step on the field, you have all these individuals, the other officials that are trying to help you out a little bit. The first thing they do is they cut your whistle off you because they tell you don't blow your whistle because it's a preseason game, and they say don't.
So this is like a little officiating hazing that you go through.
There's some games going on out there, and then they'll tell you don't make a call unless your 10-year-old son who's sitting in the stands can make that call. Just sit back and watch the game and enjoy it. So I'm watching the game, and it was between the Houston Oilers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the quarterback from Houston went on a run, and he ran out of bounds. And as he was going out of bounds, some big old lineman came, just knocked the hell out of him. And I'm thinking, great, this is going to be my first flag as an NFL referee. So I go running over there, and as I go to throw my flag, I'm watching the play here. Well, I don't see this other lineman coming at me, and he hits me, and his shoulder pad hit me in the chin, and so I've got about 7 stitches in my chin.
No
but I've thrown my flag, and I've got a foul on this individual. So they've stitched me up, and I go out, and then there's a timeout, and I see the referee, Jerry Glanville's calling the referee over. Now, Jerry's kind of a unique individual as an NFL coach, probably one of the funniest and one of my greatest friends out there. But this was my first time meeting him, and he's talking to the referee, and he's saying to the referee, I understand that's a college guy over there. The referee, go, yeah, this is his first game. He says, I hate college guys. I hate these bula officials. I want to talk to the college guy. So referee Gordon McCarter says, I'll bring him over in the next time out. So the next time out, I go over there, and here I am. I got a big patch on my chin. My first game. I can't hardly open my mouth because I'm so nervous. And Coach Glanville says to me, he says, first game, huh? I said, yeah. He said, do you know what NFL stands for? And I could hardly open my mouth. He goes, not for long. He said, and if you keep making those chicken shit calls, we're both going to be sacking groceries. and that was my indoctrination into the National Football League.
So you get insulted by a coach,
Yeah.
you get knocked out by a linebacker.
And the worst part was the call was wrong.
Oh, was
I was
it?
wrong. They called me and said, Jim, you can't make that call. I mean, that's just part of the game. But, that's some of the fun things that happen out there. The games during the preseason are a little bit different. Coaches,
more relaxed, right? I mean, they're a little
bit more relaxed. As you get into the regular season, they become a little bit more intense. When you get into the playoffs, unbelievable. And then when you get to the Super Bowl, very relaxed, which is just opposite of what you would think. Probably the most difficult game that I officiated, pressure-wise, was the championship game. It was a championship game between Jacksonville and the New England Patriots. And the reason is that the winner goes to the Super Bowl, the loser goes home. Mm-hmm. At least once you get to the Super Bowl, you're at the Super Bowl. But the Super Bowl was really the unique experience.
What I didn't know was that it's as much of an honor for the officials to make it to the Super Bowl as it is for the players to make it. As Jim explains, the officials have to earn their selection for the big game, placed purely on performance, which is graded after each game by the front office, and only the best at each position is chosen each year. And Jim was selected to officiate the Super Bowl in 1999.
In 1999, it was between Denver and the Atlanta Falcons.
Tell me how the officials get selected for the Super Bowl, because it's an honor, right?
It really is. It really is. And over the years, it kind of changes, but it still comes down to when you have 17 officials working each of the 7 positions, you're ranked 1 to 17.
Okay.
Number 1 goes to the Super Bowl. You've got to be the number 1 official. You've got to have a great year.
Who ranks you? Who's doing the ranking?
The supervisors are grading every call of every game. They're watching film, they're watching the game. So you're graded on all the calls, and you're graded on your calls, correct and incorrect. You're graded on your mechanics. You're graded on your appearance. There are so many variables that are brought in there. They want the best of the best of those games. So when I got that call, it was really unique. I mean, it was really unique. And, so I got the call. The most difficult part of getting that call was you have to make arrangements for your family. I mean, it takes about a week to you got to get hotel arrangements, you got to get tickets, you got to get, get everybody to the game. But it was it was really a unique experience to referee in the Super Bowl. I think the thing that was most that really got to me was my 80-year-old dad was in the front row. You know.
Oh, no kidding.
I mean,
Oh,
so
wow.
it was great, and you know, Cher was singing the national anthem. My family was all, my kids and my wife at the time they were up in the stands, and you know, and you look up there and you think about everybody that, you know, helped you to get to that point.
Jim was humbled by the experience, by being selected, and what hit me was the appreciation he showed for all the people responsible for this moment, all the people who helped get him here. Jim told me he was overcome with emotion.
You think about those people, the people back that gave me the opportunity at the University of Kentucky to work some, you know, intramural games, and then the guys that helped me to get some junior high games. You think about all those people as you stand out there, and there's, you know, 70 or 80,000 people. You're standing out there. Cher is singing the national anthem, and tears are just coming out of my eyes, you know. So my buddy, who I'd worked in college with, and we had been roommates, and he was also one of the officials on the game. He's standing next to me, and he said, "Are you okay? You gonna be able to do this?" Yeah, I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm fine. This is good. I'm good right now." So they get ready for the kickoff.
Players see you doing this and emotional.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
the players are like that.
But I was going to say, they have to be
oh, God.
emotional as well.
It
this
is very emotional. It is a very emotional time. And so I'm standing there, and I was getting ready, and I had to stand on the free kick line where the kicker stands. So I'm standing on the line, and I look 10 yards next to me, and my partner is not there. I'm thinking, he's supposed to be there. What the heck's going on here? I look. I'm on the wrong side of the field. I lined up on the wrong side of the field. So here I am in front of 70 or 80,000 people, and they're getting ready for TV. I go jogging across the field. I stop with a kicker, and he looks at me like, "What the hell? What's going on?" I said, "Hey, I just lined up on the wrong side. Just give me the ball. Let me rub it up a little, and I'll give it back to you, and we'll get started." So I handed it to him.
Make it look like that's what you were
Make it look
doing.
like I was doing something. I gave him back the ball. I went across the field, and the game went on. And the only person that realized it was my boss, and the other officials realized what was going on. Nobody else noticed it. But, you know, once the game started, once the kick was off, and once you get into that, it's just another game. It really is just another game. The players play better at the Super Bowl than they play regularly because they don't want to make that mistake. They don't want to.
That costs the game.
That
Yeah,
costs
sure.
them the game. But again, during the game, I thought about my dad. I thought about, you know, those individuals that gave me the opportunity to get where I was. And, you know, at that point, I always want to think, I hope that I am able to give back and do something for somebody else. And that's what I've done, and I've tried to do that. There are so many young officials that even call me now that have, I mean, last couple of weeks ago, there was a game at the University of Kentucky. I had an official call me up that I was one of his mentors. He said, "Jim, I'm going to be the referee at the Kentucky-Florida game. Would you like my tickets? Come on up." And I flew up there to watch the game. I mean, those are the things that make you feel good about what's gone on.
The brotherhood among officials is strong, supporting each other, mentoring each other, and guiding the younger men coming into the league. That's important to them. And so is making sure they understand the commitment this career requires, the commitment to yourself, your job, and your goals.
What I did was I worked for the American Athletic Conference, schools like Central Florida, South Florida, Temple, UConn, and all that. I worked with them for about 5 or 6 years and had the opportunity to work with a lot of good young officials. And what you do is when you see those officials, you know, and as I said earlier, you see somebody that you feel this guy could help the NFL. So you try to help him out. You work with him. You make your calls to the league office, to their scouts, and say, take a look at this guy. So you try to do whatever you can for so many of these. Some of them don't want to go to the NFL. Some of them are really happy right where they're at.
College.
Yeah, in college.
Okay.
You know, it's a big step. It's a big commitment, time-wise, etc. And it goes from being it really fun to be in a job, because there's so much pressure on you on Sundays when you're refereeing an NFL game.
Yeah.
So you talk to these guys, and one of the things that I've tried to do, Eric, over the years, whether I'm talking to high school groups or college groups, and I tell them, you set a goal. You set a goal, which is what I did back in 1969 when I first started officiating. I was listening to an individual named Tommy Bell, who was an NFL official that lived in Lexington. I listened to him talk about the NFL, and I had just started officiating, and I set a goal. I said, I'm gonna try to get to the NFL. Did I ever think I was gonna? Never. Never in my fondest dreams did I think I was gonna make it to the NFL. But I set that goal. And that was my goal in life, was to get there. And what I've told individuals is that you've got to set that goal. That's what's important. You set that goal. And whether it's being the best high school official or the best college official or the best NFL official, do what you can and set that goal and try to achieve that goal. And it's very difficult, especially as you move up through the system, because you have to have a family that understands. They understand the commitment that you're going to make. With the NFL, there's no Christmas, there's no Thanksgiving,
right.
There's no holidays. There's work, you're there. They may call you, even with your regular job, they may call, you're in the middle of the week with your regular job. The NFL call, we need you in New York tomorrow. We got some issues we want to talk about. You fly up there. I mean,
so it's not just a Sunday-only job, which a lot of us think it is, right?
People don't understand, with the NFL officials, they put in anywhere from 40 to 70 hours a week working this job. It's
just for that job, besides what else they're doing.
Besides what else they're doing. It's watching film. It's reviewing film. It's talking to officials. It's taking a test. There's a commitment. And they talk about, well, we need these full-time officials. We need full-time NFL officials. Mm-hmm. But my argument is the better officials right now are full-time. They work it all the time. By making them full-time, do you think the guys that are not doing very well, do you think that's going to make them better? They have to have that commitment to put in that time. So that's the thing. So as I talk to groups and younger officials, I try to explain to them, you've got to have this commitment, and you've got to understand, and your family has got to understand that birthdays, anniversaries, you're going to be gone. And it was very difficult for me.
I asked Jim to tell me more about how committing to his goal of reaching the top of the officiating profession was difficult for him, how it affected him and his family, and he was open and honest about things he could have done better.
It really affected me with my kids. I mean, I was gone all the time, and it hurt a lot. And fortunately, I have a absolutely wonderful relationship with my son and my daughter right now. I mean, but I wasn't the good father that I was there all the time. I tried to get to my son's football games, but I was traveling. I was, every weekend. I mean, since 1969, 70, I've been gone on weekends, whether it was high school, college, or football, or NFL. So again, you've got to understand that, and the family's got to understand, and you've got to be able to manage your time. You've got to be able to manage your situation. I didn't do a good job at that.
So tell me how you've changed that since.
Well, basically once I got into the NFL, my kids were grown, so it made it a little bit easier. The ones that it's concerning me is the younger officials that have the young families that are away. Now officials seem to be a little bit younger, trying to get them into the NFL.
So it's not just a commitment of your own. Your family has to, agree to that commitment, and they have to be committed as well. And there's a sacrifice there.
There really is. There is a sacrifice, and it's very difficult on wives. It really is. I know they are able to puff their chests out a little bit and say, my husband's an NFL referee, and the compensation is great. It's great. It gives an opportunity to do a lot of things that you'll never be able to do. but it also means there's a lot of time that you're going to be by yourself and you're going to be on your own without the husband around.
So you need a strong woman. I mean, she's got to
Absolutely.
be very strong as well.
Absolutely.
It's not just commitment and a strong woman and family that is essential to success in this field. Jim and I got into a discussion of the level of integrity each man must have to make it as an official.
It's probably the most important part of the whole gamut of officiating. You know, when you look, I remember this when I used to watch NFL games, and I'd watch a certain referee, and I'd say, hey, this game's going to be okay because this guy's refereeing. You know, when I got on the field, I kind of hoped people would feel the same way. I'm on the field. I know that when I was in charge of the referees, when I was a supervisor up there, and I would talk to the other guys up in New York, and would have an official on the field, you know, we would kind of say, hey, we feel good about this one. Or I'll tell you, there were times where we didn't feel very good about a crew that we put together, especially during the playoffs. You know, sometimes, you know, you had certain requirements during the playoffs. You're trying to put crews together because they don't work together in the playoffs. So trying to put the crews together, it was kind of like, you know, there was never, ever, I can never, ever think during my whole career there that we ever questioned the integrity of any of the individuals that were out on the field. You know, that was all part of being an NFL official. You had to have that integrity. You know, to back up a little bit, when I applied to the NFL, my application was being looked at. I had NFL security people who are former FBI people. They came to my hometown. They went back to Massachusetts. I hadn't been to Massachusetts for 20 years. They went back to my hometown, into my old neighborhoods, talked to individuals, talked about my family.
No kidding. So they do a thorough background check. I mean, if you're on the field, you've got to be integrity all the way back.
They look into all your finances over all the, you know, as far back as they want to go.
They want to make sure that you're not on the take. That,
Absolutely.
You know, you're not, yeah, I mean, because that's a big thing.
Them,
sure.
And they're checking them all the time. They are checking them all the time. And it's, you know, some people think it's a little bit of a, yeah, they get frustrated with it. But I can't. I mean, if you have nothing to hide, and that's about the NFL. It's all about the integrity. If you're concerned about this official, you saw what happened with the NBA. We had the NBA official, you know, was betting on games, and basically that spreads to all the officials that are out there.
I was just saying, it makes everybody look bad.
It even makes it made us look bad. It makes everybody look bad.
Again, this is their brotherhood looking out for each other, demanding integrity at all times from each other. And as Jim explains, it's not just on the field. Officials look for their fellow officials to be well-rounded men of integrity. Who you are at all times is crucial. Jim told me when he retired from working on field and took a job in the front office in New York, one of his responsibilities was NFL Europe, basically a training ground for players and new officials. He told me how they would put together teams of NFL officials, college officials, and NFL Europe officials, and have them not only work games together, but also go out together to get a feel for them off the field.
The thing that was great about it was we got to see individuals on the field, how they could perform. But we would also go how they acted with us when we went to a bar and had a beer, and how they acted on their own when we just kind of let them, you know, and we found some that we didn't think fit our guidelines, that we didn't want them in there. And that kind of knocked them out. But it was a great area that, again, it's more than the on-field presence. It's the off-field, how you perform off the field, and what kind of, you know, integrity you have, what kind of personality you have. Can other guys get along with you?
Since integrity is so important in this line of work, I asked Jim about mistakes, and I cited the example of the non-call last season in New Orleans, which arguably sent the Rams to the Super Bowl instead of the Saints. I asked him how long those bad calls can follow an official through his career, and if those mistakes can actually cost an official his job.
It takes a while in the New Orleans area.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Which is really what you're thinking of. Because let me tell you, I know those two officials that were on the call. I've been with them. I've seen them in that, you know, since that time. And I can tell you from personal experience, no one is more critical of an NFL official than the NFL official.
Right.
I mean, you live and die with every call, as does your family. I mean, your family's the same way. I mean, I used to come home and, my kids would say, how did that call go? What about that call? And those things happen. But in answer to your question, it has an effect. It's not a career ending because it was just a mistake. What the league tries to do is they put all these stopgaps in. They put replay in there, and they try to expand it. It's still a game that officials make mistakes.
It's human error. I mean, you're human.
They
still
make mistakes in replay. They put all these new these new rules in to protect the game, to protect these pass interference for one call that happened last year. 256 games and all the playoff games and about 150 calls in every game, and you're talking about one play that and I understand. Magnified.
I was going to say it was a very visible play, sure.
Very visible.
And you even said the championship games are the most important.
No one hurt more than those two guys.
Oh, I can imagine.
When they saw it. I mean, but it's so easy for us as fans to sit there on our TV, and then they'll show it and they'll slow it down. Try doing it like boom, like that, when all of a sudden it happens, and now you've got to make a decision. Now, did the ball get there? Did his helmet get there? You try to make all this, but that's their job, and that's what they're supposed to do. But there was so much question about. They went back to integrity. They went back to here these guys are all from California that made these calls, and it was the Rams.
They look for any connection they can make.
They try to protect the officials a little bit. They don't like you to work in your hometown and all that. But let me tell you, it's harder to work in your hometown because you almost go the opposite to make sure you don't do it. So it's a very difficult situation. But and again, it's not a career-ending type situation. And I would hope that they get through this year. It's bad because it's almost like you have a red mark on your back when you go out there because people know. It's amazing the number of individuals, how knowledgeable fans are, how knowledgeable they are of the NFL rules, how knowledgeable they are of the NFL officials, because there's so much transparency now in it.
And the information's easy to get.
And it's easy to get. When I was on the field, you didn't know who was who. I mean, they covered everything up. They wouldn't let anybody talk to anybody. I mean, we couldn't even go we couldn't go to Vegas and we couldn't go to Atlantic City when I was in the league. They just weren't allowed to do that.
Even though officials mentor each other and look out for each other, making sure they keep to their integrity, the league keeps a close watch on them as well, both on the field and off.
We couldn't do any gambling.
Well, the obvious,
sure. Gambling was out, and we used to be drug tested and alcohol tested, and and all that stuff, and don't get a speeding ticket or don't get in trouble with the law. I mean,
were there certain people they didn't want you associating with either, like just because it looked bad?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you had they kind of followed you. They were very protective of you. I mean, they kept you under kind of under lock and key. But now it's everything is so open, and it's so difficult for these individuals that are officiating now because their whole life is under this microscope, and now with social media, and I saw a situation in the Southeastern Conference where one of their basketball officials was working a game between LSU and I don't know, Kentucky or something like that, and somebody picked up years ago a picture of him on Facebook with an LSU T-shirt on, and they made a big issue of him officiating this game. It's just unfortunate that you go to those lengths right now. So you got to watch out what's happened 10 years ago, plus what you're doing. What's going on in your life now.
That's fascinating, man. I mean, I can just imagine, you talk about the pressure being on the field, but there's now a pressure being off field
right.
too. I mean, do you second guess yourself? Do you think, hey, I'm going to go to this thing or do this with someone? What if I get photographed? What if I say the wrong thing? I mean.
And don't get a DUI. But I could tell you that the officials are under the same guidelines that the players are under. You know, if there's a drug situation, they go through the same process that the players go through. They have to go through the system, and they don't just fire guys. They don't just fire them arbitrarily because they have a collective bargaining agreement that's come in. I mean, when I started in the league, it was just the boss could fire you on the spot if you didn't. Now they've got some protections in place, which is great for the officials. It's really good for them. But they're a pretty clean group of individuals. You won't see them out there causing too many issues.
It's common knowledge that most professional officials have another job or own a business. While an NFL official, Jim owned a mortgage company. I asked him if there was anything he took from officiating that was advantageous in his other life.
Officiating gave me a tremendous confidence when I would go in to real estate groups and be a speaker to talk about the products that I had to sell, because I was certainly able to get in front of groups of people without being, intimidated. And it gave me a comfort level. It opened a lot of doors for me. It really opened a lot of doors because I was an NFL official.
Right. There's only a handful of you, so that's a very kind of small fraternity to be in.
People wanted to talk to me, and they want to talk to officials. They like talking to you. They like you telling stories. They like you going in there and talking to them, talking to their groups of people. So it opened a lot of doors, and I was blessed to have that opportunity.
In talking with him, it seemed that Jim's career trajectory was smooth. He started in college, got some fortunate breaks, made it to the NFL, and then reached the top by working a Super Bowl and then transitioning to an executive position in the league office. I asked Jim about any challenges he faced along the way, and he spoke of his family and mistakes that he made, and also about the awarenesses and ownership of those mistakes that have allowed him to repair some damaged relationships.
That's a tough one. That's a really tough question. Again, was the biggest challenge was being able to give my family the time and not take it by spending more time in the NFL. That was a problem for me, and it cost me a family, and it cost me my wife. I worked up in New York. We were up there during 9/11. It was a pretty traumatic time, but I was so concerned with my position in the National Football League that at the time I didn't spend the time that I needed to with my wife up there. She was alone. She was actually alone during 9/11 because I was in Denver, and so she had to deal with the traumatic situation up there, and I was in Denver. I was out there for 5 days, and then I came back, and it was back to work as usual, and there was still the smoldering towers, and her dealing with the situation there, and it was a challenge that I didn't do a very good job at, because I just kind of felt, she can handle this. Let me go back. Because we were just coming through a work stoppage with the officials, and I wanted to get back into our job and make sure that this is what we got to do. Hey, let's get this thing right. And I spent too much time worrying about my job and not enough time worrying about my personal life.
Yeah. How have you changed that since? I mean, you put a much more attention on personal.
Yes.
Now over and I mean, I know you're retired now, right?
I'm retired.
Fully
now.
Retired.
Fully retired. So it's a whole lot easier because I just kind of do what I do, what I need to do. Plus, I'm single now, so I don't have to worry about. So I don't have to worry.
I just
about
do what
it.
I want.
Now I can do. Now I can do what I want. But I learned from this. And it's interesting because I have a great relationship with my ex-wives, because I've realized what caused the breakups of our marriages, because it had nothing to do with anything other than me, being more concerned with myself and not being concerned with the family with my wife at the time. I spent more time, I always felt that, hey, you know what? I could work at the NFL, and I've got one of the top officiating positions in the country. I make a great salary, do this and do this. So my wife should be really happy with that. And I realized that's not the case.
Sure, it was more about attention. She wanted the attention. And your attention was here on the NFL, and she wanted the attention there.
And I just thought that, hey, that was it. And I've apologized. And it took me a while to realize. It took me leaving the NFL, leaving the workforce completely, to realize that, you know what, there's more to life than, we spend too much time worrying about our jobs and worrying about our work rather than worrying about our relationships.
Is that something you impart on the younger officials now when you talk to them? I mean, I know it's difficult. We talked about that a minute ago, but is it something you make sure that they know?
One of the things I tell them is you've got to include your family in everything you do, whether it's bringing them to games or, hey, when you have a free weekend, make sure you're with them, or do as much as you can with your family, because this officiating is going to drive a wedge in there, because you've got to make a decision. And basically, if you want to advance in officiating, you've got to make that commitment to be gone, to be committed to officiating, and your family's got to understand that.
With all this mentoring back and forth, this brotherhood of officials, and men stepping up to help other men, I asked Jim who his heroes are.
It had to be my father. Here's an individual that, that came over from Greece when he was a young kid, didn't speak any English, worked his tail off his whole life to provide for a family. We had a great family life because he did very well in his business and worked really hard. So it had to be my dad. And and then I was fortunate because I had this individual, Skeeter Johnson, in Lexington, Kentucky, who basically, I had just got married. I was living in Lexington. He kind of took me under his wing and gave me the opportunity to start officiating, gave me the opportunity to have a graduate assistantship at the university, and then kept me on and gave me an opportunity to become the director of intramural sports at the University of Kentucky, and followed my career throughout. And so, those are there are so many other individuals that have worked. It's so hard to remember them all. Individuals, older gentlemen that gave me opportunities. Hey, Jim, come work some games with us. Hey, Jim, do this with us. And, I would hope that there are individuals that have called me up and said the same thing. What these guys did for me, I've done for them. And it makes me feel good that I'm able to give back a little bit like that.
Sure, and kind of help these guys in their career too.
Right.
Anyone that you've mentored from high school or college who's now in the NFL?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. There's individuals that that I've seen and I've worked with, individuals that I've hired, but not one. The couple of them that have come up and they're still in college, but nobody that really has made it because of me. And I don't like to say it's because of me. They do it on their own. All I can do is put them in the direction to get there and tell them what it's going to take. But then sometimes, then they need that break. And then once they get that break, then it's the burden's on their shoulders.
Working around all these incredibly successful men, great athletes, inspirational coaches, I asked Jim if there was anyone in particular who made a lasting impression on him.
The number one individual was Al Davis for the Raiders. Funny story, my first year in the league, before the game, we're walking around the field. Just myself and one of the other officials, we do our pre-game thing, and I hear somebody call, "Hey, Jim." And I look, and it's Al Davis. And I'm thinking, now what did I do? So
Right.
We went over and kind of, shook hands and talked, and he asked,
It's the first time you met him? Or?
First time I've met him.
Okay.
How are you doing? I said, I'm doing good. He said, the family okay? Kids doing okay? I said, yeah, they're doing good. How's the mortgage business doing? He knew everything about me. They do their homework. They know about you, It's kind of interesting. You try to have a relationship with them, but don't have a relationship with them. You don't want to get too close to them. You call them by their first names, and you have this relationship with them, but you don't want to be friendly with them. There's that perception that people see. It's kind of like, I remember, when I first got in, the big thing we'd get autographs. You'd ask players for autographs.
No kidding. There's nothing wrong with that.
There was things wrong with it.
Oh, I was going to say, it kind of looked.
But we did it. We did it. I remember I had a football, and it was autographed by Joe Montana and Dan Marino.
Wow.
So I come home one weekend, and I look in the backyard. There's the footballs out there. And I said to my son, I said, Mike, what's going on? That's a pretty. He said, Dad, it's a football. I just want to play football with. They want. And after that, I never got another autograph. But when you get to meet, these from anybody from Dan Marino. I mean, all these players.
Yeah, legendary players, Hall of Fame
Brady
players.
and all these guys. And I think the thing is, I worked the Super Bowl with John Elway, his last game. I was in Hawaii for the Pro Bowl, and he was there with his family. And I was sitting there with my family. We were sitting on the beach, and he was walking off, and he came over and talked and said hello to me. And and things like that. I think my family was more impressed with that than everything I ever did in the NFL. Again, it's a tough game, and you try to be as fair as you can out there, and you like to have relationships, but you have this relationship with players and coaches, but basically it's got to be professional.
What's interesting, what I just remember when you said that about the player, about Elway coming over and saying hello, and I'm feeling, there's a lot of these guys, again, legendary guys are out there, but they're playing a game that they love, that they have passion for.
Right.
And I remember seeing, I don't know what I was watching, but it was probably a couple years ago, one of the, pre-game shows, they're doing things, they're on the field, and they showed one of the rookie quarterbacks, I cannot remember who it was, but they showed one of the officials walked over to him and said hello to him, shook his hand, gave him a couple words of encouragement, and said, hey, listen, just have fun out here. Yeah. And I thought, wow, it was pretty amazing to see the official go out and do that. Is that something regular too, like with these younger players, rookies? Do the officials, especially those of you that have been around for a long time, kind of welcome even the players to the league? And
some officials are really good at it, and some officials are really bad at it. Some officials are too robotic. They get out there and they've got this straight-looking military face that they want to keep on, and they want to. I worked way back when there was a lot of crap that was going on out on the field, and but a lot of the older officials played against some of these coaches, and it gave them they had the banter was different at that time, but for the most part, you try to just have that professional relationship with them. Some officials don't like to converse with the players at all. I've always liked the fact that, hey, you know what? They're just individuals. They're just human beings. Just have a good time. We're all out there. We're doing our job. We're going to do a job. They get upset with you sometimes, and you get upset with them sometimes. But you've just got to have that type of a relationship. But it's nothing that you can teach somebody. That's just a personality trait that we used to look for, especially in Europe. That the guy has that kind of a personality that he can talk with you. When things are getting really bad out there, you've got to be able to kind of calm that situation down. So, some guys are really good at it. Some guys just can't do it at all.
Jim had been on the field with men like Joe Montana, Dan Marino, John Elway, and hundreds of others who were at the top of their game. Knowing that referees have to stay impartial, I had to know if there was ever any play or anything a player had done that he and other officials were just in awe of, where he was just blown away by something.
One of the questions I'm always asked is, who's the best, who is the greatest football player you've ever seen out there? And without reservation, my answer is always Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders changes the whole complexion of the football game. And in my early years, I was a deep official, basically downfield covering pass interference. And to watch Deion covering Jerry Rice or Andre Rison, and to watch the athleticism of these individuals. I would just sit there, and sometimes you just get caught up in the game.
You're a fan of the game,
it's like,
right? I mean, you have
holy
to.
crap, did you see what he just did? And, you're out there and you see these athletes that you've watched on TV, and you try to keep as even a keel as possible, but sometimes it's pretty impressive. And then, as I said to you, being at the Super Bowl and just being at any of those games, you're just out there on the field, and all of a sudden, you're out there and there's 70 or 80,000 people, and you're just looking around, you're going, holy crap, how lucky am I to be in this position? And, you just say, thank you. You thank all those people that gave you that opportunity to be there. Because I've had a great career. I'm just blessed with what I've done. And I'll tell you, I just smile when I think about it, and I just feel so fortunate, to have had that opportunity, because so few get this opportunity.
As truly appreciative as Jim is for the career and life he's had, I asked what he would have done had he not made it to the NFL.
I really would have pushed to go to the National Basketball Association. I was moving up pretty quickly in the system. When I was in college, I was doing small college basketball and having an opportunity to move up. I loved basketball. I loved officiating basketball more than I loved officiating football. So I thought basketball would have been the route I would have liked to have gone.
Since Jim did make it to the top of his career, I asked him for advice for other men who have a dream, a goal they're working towards, but may have some doubts about getting there.
You set that goal, and you've got to determine what your doubts are and what is causing you to doubt that ability to do that, and then you got to see if you can, beat those, and see if you can, get rid of those doubts, because you set those goals. And if something's in the way, you've got to go around it. You've got to be able to do something to achieve that goal.
The belief has to be there.
Yeah, you got to know that you can do it. Just like when you go, whether you want to get in the NBA or the NFL, this is the goal that I wanted. This is the one. Now, why am I not having that opportunity? What's causing me not to have that opportunity? Now, can I do something to correct that? And I think that's the same with anything, whether it's in sports related or any job that you have. I mean, whether you're trying to move forward in another job. I mean, what's holding me back right now, and what can I do to get myself in position to get that job that I'm looking for?
That's great advice. Looking at yourself and looking at the obstacles in the way and making a plan to overcome them. I want to thank Jim Daopoulos for joining us today, for telling us the story of how he succeeded in his goals and of the commitment and integrity and brotherhood among NFL officials. It without question made me see officials in a whole new light as men of incredible commitment and integrity. Now, as I always do after my interviews, I got the men of the round table together to get their takeaways from what was said. And I'm going to air the entire discussion, the entire round table discussion on Saturday. But here's just a few clips. Now, joining me for this session are Mark, Frank, Tom, and John. Frank leads us off.
You see that all the time. I see that in the corporate world. There's a lot of people that are there to mentor you, help you along, really make sure they point out when you do something well. And then there's people that do the exact opposite. Won't say a word if you do something well, love to point out if you make a mistake. And it all ties back to their own, insecurities as a person. So yeah, I thought that was a powerful lesson.
Here's Tom.
When you're the referee and you're roughing with these 300-pound, muscular men, and how do you deal with that? And he talked about it's just being yourself and having the presence, which is really interesting. I think that I can totally see that and see it in business as well. It can be a man or it can be a woman. It doesn't really matter, that walk into a room and you can tell that they have their presence. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're the biggest, the strongest, the best looking person in the room, but they exude that confidence that you really feel. And I can totally see, going back to his business, where you have to have that presence or you're not going to be successful.
This is Alex.
They're putting these guys through top secret clearance level FBI checks. They send, not real FBI, some are former FBI agents, but it's the same level as that, where NFL representatives go back and talk to their teachers and, people that they grew up with just to get their character. I did not realize how much stress or focus was put on integrity. That kind of blew me away. It was like, wow. And even unto themselves, they hold each other to that standard.
And finally, John.
It just seems like the mentorship is a really big thing for them. And I thought it was amazing when he gets on the field to officiate his first Super Bowl that he said the first thing he thought about was all the people that helped him get there. I thought that was pretty profound, rather than being in awe or, looking around at all the things going on. This is a Super Bowl, but no, he just was thankful and was really appreciative of everybody that helped him get there. I thought that was awesome.
I want to thank the men of the round table for their insights. For us, I think the mentoring, the support, the integrity, the commitment, all huge. And to be secure enough in yourself to want to see other men succeed and to do what you can to help them succeed. Just an amazing thing that happens in that profession, something that I'm going to actually take a look at in myself going forward. Now, I want to know what you got out of Jim's story. Does it inspire you to mentor someone or seek out a mentor? Does it make you want to set higher goals? Let me know. You can find me on social media. We keep the links on the website. The website is WLKHpodcast.com. Just go there, click them, come on in, leave us a comment. And remember to also rate us and leave a review and comment. Most importantly, make sure to share this show with men you know will get value from it. Men who probably hate officials and referees and need to see a different side of them. So please pass it on. Again, I want to thank Jim Daopoulos for joining us today, for being real and honest, and for telling us the story of his journey to modern manhood. And I want to thank you for listening to Eric Rogel Talks with Warriors, Lovers, Kings, and Heroes today. I'm Eric Rogel, and I'm honored to be with you, to be your brother on your hero's journey. I'll talk to you next week.